we are out of Jonah 1 today. Yeah, we wrapped Jonah 1 last week. I'm going to move this over with liquid on it. So that's going to be an exciting escapade. There we go. Okay, so for people who are joining us just now because you were doing some other class, or you decided to make your mid-year, end-year resolution to hop into a Sunday school, welcome. This is a class on Jonah, but also kind of not on Jonah, because what we're doing is we're using Jonah to look at all different areas of the Bible, which is fun. And since we have a lot of new people, and actually I got the last couple weeks after our most recent class, I got a number of questions from people that I thought would be worth addressing. And the main kind of theme of those questions is about the amount that I reference rabbinical teaching in this class. Because if you've been a Christian for any amount of time and you've been to Sunday school, my guess is the amount of rabbis you've heard quoted in a Christian Sunday school is probably close to zero. And the frequency with which rabbis get quoted is probably also pretty low. And so I reference rabbinical teaching a lot in this class. And that raises, I think, some valid questions, some very natural questions from a lot of people. And it usually goes something like this. If I were to quote biblical scholars, Christian scholars like Kenneth Bailey or N.T. Wright or Tim Mackey or whoever, most of us are like, that's cool, that's fine. We're used to doing that. But when we bring in a rabbi, I think we start to get uncomfortable because we're like, well, this is not a Christian. This is someone who knows their Old Testament really well, but doesn't accept Jesus. Isn't that a little suspect? Shouldn't we be, should we be quoting those people? Should we be paying attention to what they're saying? Which is a valid question. So I want to address that a little bit if that's something you've been uncomfortable with or have questions about. Because I think also this speaks to something bigger within how we approach the Bible and the Jewish tradition. So first off, I've had a number of people ask me in the past, instead of quoting rabbis, could you just find Christian scholars who say the same thing? And the answer to that is usually no, I can't do that because usually there aren't. And part of the reason for that is for most of Christian history, we have been, at best, disinterested in what Jewish people have to say about the Bible, and at worst, openly hostile. Martin Luther, pretty famously, was like, we could burn down those synagogues. That'd be a good idea. Because in his mind, the Jewish people, because they rejected Jesus, could only kind of mislead people away from Christianity. So that, I think, you probably don't have like that intensive feelings about it. But the concern of like, okay, we're reading someone who rejects Jesus. How do we process that? Is that something we ought to be doing? So the reason that I tend to bring up rabbis is a few reasons. One is that for most of our history, because we've been so disinterested / hostile to Jewish thought, we don't know what Jewish people are saying. And the whole thing this class is predicated on, which is using like keywords and images and themes to connect different stories of the Bible to each other, that is a Jewish innovation. That's a uniquely Jewish thing that we, unfortunately, in the church have been ignorant of for about 2,000 years. It is only in the last 100 or so that we've started to catch up on this, and it's because we started talking to Jewish scholars. If you look at the Jewish tradition, they've been doing this the whole time, and they're very good at it. So I think then it would behoove us to look at what they're saying, because they've got a lot more experience in doing this. I mean, they've literally had the Bible longer than us, so they've got some good things to say. The sorry, I'm running on a donut and a cup of coffee right now. Yeah, I think crucially, just like if I were to quote John Piper, R.C. Sproul, or Augustine, or Martin Luther, or whatever, my approach to a rabbi is always going to be, this is a devout, intelligent, sincere person with a very deep knowledge of the Old Testament, who is nonetheless a fallible human being, right? So I can approach what they say with a curious, open mind, but also with critical thinking. The same way I hope we would approach John Calvin or Martin Luther or Augustine or R.C. Sproul or whoever. So that's, broadly speaking, I think the rabbis have a lot of good things to say to us, especially because since they're not Protestants like us, they see things we don't see a lot of the time. We can kind of get tunnel vision on some things. We can read things like the Good Samaritan and be like, that's about grace and about how you can't be the Good Samaritan and you should go to the cross instead. A Jewish person is never going to read it that way. And that means that they're going to see things in the text that we don't see. They have blind spots that we don't, and we have blind spots that they don't. So that's useful. So yeah. The other thing I think to be aware of as I'll reference rabbinical stuff, especially with like the very weird midrash we talked about last time, where like Jonah's fish is like a submarine and the sons of Korah are like under the sea. If you don't remember that, I sent out an article about it. You can read that. The way that rabbis teach is actually quite different than how we teach. In the West, when we teach on the Bible or when we do commentary, we tend to prioritize information. So like if you open up an ESV study Bible, you're going to see a bunch of footnotes. They're going to explain things, clarify things, and that's wonderful and beautiful and great. I love my NIV Cultural Background Study Bible so much. It's so helpful to me because of how much it explains things. But that is not how an Eastern rabbi is going to approach teaching the Bible. They're focused on formation. Rather than just kind of giving you the answer, they want you to wrestle with the answer. The process of you engaging with the text to a rabbi is in some ways just as important, or maybe sometimes even more important, than you landing on exactly the right answer. So that means that sometimes they're going to give you a very weird riddle, or they're going to write what looks like biblical fan fiction, where they're just adding stuff to the story. Oftentimes, they're not trying to get you to be like, this is what happened. The fish was a submarine, and it had a pearl inside of it that gave out divine light, and Jonah looked through the eyes, and he swam under the temple, and then he saw the temple. Like, that's all in Rabbi Eliezer. I don't think Rabbi Eliezer thought that's what actually happened, but he's telling you this fantastical story to get you go like, what? Like, what are you trying to tell me right now? So I don't know if this is making much sense. I feel like I'm all over the place at the moment. But when we bring in rabbinical teaching, like at no point ever am I like, this is what you have to believe to really get what Jonah is saying. That's never what I'm saying. This is always something you can be curious and critical about. But also, when I bring in a rabbinical teaching, if it feels weird to you, or it feels like that's uncomfortable, or I don't think that's correct, that's probably on purpose. The rabbi is probably aware they're doing that to you. And what they want you to do is to dig into the text to see, why would they say this? What's going on? Is there a word here? Does this connect to something else? What kind of riddle are they weaving here, and what are they trying to teach me? Yeah.
This week I was reading something written by Dennis Prager, who is a Jewish believer,
Mm-hmm.
and he kept emphasizing that the name Israel means wrestles with God.
Yes.
I see that very much in what you're trying to say.
Yes.
They want us to wrestle with God on everything that he's written, because that's the way it becomes a part of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the reasons the rabbis do this is that if you read maybe you've had this experience where you go to a passage, there's something weird in it, and then you read a study Bible and it kind of gives you an explanation. You go, oh, okay, and you never think about it again, right? You just kind of move on. And the rabbis think that actually the process of you meditating on that day and night, tossing and turning, having questions, feeling conflicted, that process of wrestling with the text is actually something that's going to form you into the kind of person God wants you to be. And so they're often going to challenge you more than they're going to comfort you. They're going to confuse you more than they're going to orient you. And that's so that you can do the hard work in community, especially, of talking through the text and digging into it and seeing what it says. So that was a lot. I don't know if that made any sense. Sorry. Any questions about that, just broadly? Just threw a lot at you.
Can you just give us a list of 2 or 3 that you especially use frequently?
Yeah, I can.
You can do it in the email.
Yeah, I would say, broadly speaking, so first of all, if you're interested in getting into Jewish thought, which I highly recommend you do, by the way, when I read an Old Testament passage, the first place I go, if I want more thoughts on it, is Jewish texts, because they've been thinking about it for longer than us, and they know Hebrew better than us too. So there's an app/website that I use all the time. Wow, this marker is going to jail. Just gonna put that there. Called Sefaria, Sefaria, and it's just basically you can go to any passage in Tanakh, not the New Testament because Jewish, but what you'll be able to do is you can click on a passage and it can take you to all the various commentaries on that, all the midrash, stuff in Talmud, stuff in Mishnah, whatever you really want to get into. The people I'd really recommend checking out, these are, for a lot of people, these are the big 3. If you're like a Torah student, these are usually the guys you spend the most time with. Rashi is really cool because Rashi is very concise, and he talks about absolutely everything. Any passage you want, you're going to find Rashi saying something about it. So he's great. He does a little better job just kind of explaining things sometimes. Ibn Ezra is if you really want to get into the Hebrew stuff. If you're like, I get excited by grammar, Abraham's your boy. Go to him. And then Rambam he only really does Torah. And Rambam is weird because usually he only speaks up when he disagrees with Rashi and Ibn Ezra. But when he does, it's so good. Rambam is great. We love Rambam. You might know him better as Maimonides if you did like Intro to Philosophy or something like that. So yeah, I'd recommend these. There are also, if you want to get into the real crazy stuff, in Torah, there's a series of midrash called the Rabbi. It's a little confusing because they have different names. So instead of Genesis, they call it Bereshit. So going to things like Bereshit Rabbah, Shemot Rabbah, things like that. This is where you're going to find like the really wild riddle story kind of style of commentary. And there's just, some of it is bananas. Something you should know going in, rabbis are super sexist. So ladies, just know, not that Christians have been much better about that historically, but that's in there. So just know that. That's a big blind spot for them. But lots of really interesting stuff to chew on in there. Yeah.
So are these contemporary, or are these people who've already passed on?
Oh yeah, no, so these are, all of these are medieval era commentators. A lot of them are referencing back to like ancient commentators. Anytime you see the sages referenced, they're talking about people who lived like pre-Jesus, presumably, or maybe contemporary to Jesus. And then the Rabbah is literally pulling from traditions like across time. But a lot of the kind of classical people that you're going to read are from, the medieval era. I think Rashi is French. I think both of these guys are some kind of Arabic, although don't quote me on that.
Messianic Jewish people, what are their thoughts on these guys?
It's going to be different depending on who you're looking at. But it depends on what they think about Torah. But you're definitely going to find, if you're looking at like a Messianic Jewish rabbi, and they're going to know who Rashi is, and they're going to know most of like Rashi's more prominent teachings. I don't know exactly what they say about Midrash. I do know The Chosen, the show about Jesus and the disciples. They have a Messianic rabbi who consults on that, Benjamin Sobel, I want to say. And the way he describes The Chosen is it's a Midrash on the Gospels. It's us like trying to bring insight to this text by telling these kind of extra stories that we think align with it. So yeah, it's going to depend on who you talk to. There's a lot of, the Messianic Judaic movement is very diverse, and not always fully in alignment with itself. But a lot of them will at least be like aware of this stuff, and a lot of them find a lot of value in it. Yeah.
Along with that, just the Jewish thought is not all aligned together either.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like Christianity, where we have different denominations and numerous different subgroups within each denomination.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
have the same issue,
Yeah.
but they all live together.
And one thing that's actually quite cool, one thing I respect very much about the Jewish tradition is if you read things like Bereshit Rabbah or the Talmud or things like that, what you will find is in these texts that are like really highly respected texts, you're supposed to read these things if you're like a student of Torah, they document their disagreements and they present them all together. So like you'll have, like I said, Rambam pretty much only speaks up when he thinks Rashi is wrong. But Rambam has a ton of respect for Rashi, and this is a thing you talk about in Torah school or in Beth Seder is, Rashi says this, Ibn Ezra says this, Rambam says this, and rather than that being seen as like these guys are all opposed to each other, that like this is just how we deal with Scripture, right? We're working it out in community with people around us and with people across time. And that means we're going to like have disagreements and different interpretations. And that's actually something that we can embrace in a way that helps us to maybe be more generous with each other, but also to get a deeper sense of what the text says, to kind of see outside of our own blind spots. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to get much out of that because I don't have a ton of like the tools to go and read Midrash on my own. I know you've been practicing that a lot in this class, and I missed most of them, but I do think like Bema like walks you through like a lot of how to
Yeah.
go into Midrash.
Yeah, I think that's good. If you want to like just dive into a really good writer, Rabbi, walking through Torah and have your mind absolutely blown out of the back of your head, then Rabbi David Foreman is a phenomenal teacher on this stuff. Yeah, lots of great books by him. He's with a ministry called Aleph Beta, which is kind of like the Jewish Bible Project. Also really, really good, although most of their stuff is behind a paywall. So, although they're starting to put some stuff on YouTube, which is nice. And then, yeah, Bema Discipleship is a podcast / ministry that is similar to Bible Project, really trying to bring the Jewish perspective into Christianity. It's run by Christians. And the big difference between Bema and Bible Project is they do a lot more kind of exploring of this more rabbinical side. So if you're interested in that, they walk through the entire Bible. It's very good. They have really good teachers. Really recommend that. Get ready to be challenged because they're not all like Reformed Presbyterian people who have all the like tidy answers. But really good stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah. These are all contemporary, yeah. Rabbi David Foreman is still doing stuff. Aleph Beta and Bema are both ministries that are going on. Yeah, Foreman especially is good. Read his book on Exodus. It's very, very good. And if you want to really feel challenged, read his book on Genesis, because crazy. Anything else?
You haven't gotten very far.
No, that's true. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I recorded all of this. I'll keep it in the recording, I guess. But also just, so I got some of this feedback on the rabbi stuff. Some people I think were genuinely felt kind of concerned about what felt like kind of going into really extra biblical territory. So first of all, I appreciate that feedback. If you ever want to ask a question or give feedback of some kind, you can always shoot me an email. I am not afraid to hear feedback. It is very good when we have feedback and accountability in the body of Christ, so feel free to email me there. Yeah, there you go. I like Jewish stuff. That could have been the the long and short of it, but okay, so I've heard there's a book called Jonah, and it's good. So let's get into Jonah. Jonah 2 today. I am relatively hopeful. Earlier this week, I was like, I think we'll do Jonah 2 in one day. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think we'll get a good amount of the way through here. We spent a lot of time on Jonah 1 because I think you got to do a lot of table setting to unpack what is happening in the rest of the book. And Jonah 2, there's all kinds of stuff we can explore here for sure. But I think there's one theme that really stands out to me that I think maybe focusing kind of our meditation on that will be positive. So let's start verse 1 of Jonah 2, and we'll just read this whole thing. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever, yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon the dry land. Dun, 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 dun. Weird ending. Speaking of weird, we talked some about this last time. But yeah, looking at this prayer specifically, we talked all about the fish last time. So let's focus in on this prayer. Anything that seems strange in here? Confusing, weirdly specific.
Well, we talked about this is the first time Jonah ever prays to God.
Yep. And I think we emphasized too, I never got this. I really didn't get this until I started researching for this class. He doesn't start praying until after 3 days and 3 nights. Right? So he's just been in this fish, arms crossed, I assume, saying nothing. And then after 3 days and 3 nights, he decides to pray. So that seems strange. Why do that then? And yeah, this is the most we ever hear out of Jonah, this one section. We've heard almost nothing out of Jonah up to this point, and everything we've heard is very vague and standoffish, and now we're suddenly getting like a psalm all of a sudden. So that's weird. That seems like a weird shift in character. Anything else weird?
Well, he says the belly of Sheol. Sheol's the place of the dead, right?
Yes. So we have, and we've heard earlier, where is he saying this from? The belly of the fish. So we have like a double belly going on here. But Jonah doesn't say the belly of a fish. He says the belly of Sheol, which is, land of the dead. Not like Dante's Inferno, land of the dead, but more like a land of shades, land of kind of lifeless people. So that's interesting.
I have to wonder if he actually did get a little taste of hell, shall we say. Thinking about testimonials from people who have, it's followed by whales, not fish, but saying that it's dark, it reeks in there, it's hard to breathe. This one guy, he said, it felt like I was suffocating the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't that very much the picture that was painted by Jesus when he talked about the rich man being in hell? He's definitely in a lot of physical pain, physical discomfort, shall we say.
Yeah, this situation for sure. There's a whole debate which we're not going to get into because we only have so much time, about like, did Jonah die? There are people who contend that like what Jonah is talking about and the way he talks about it, that Jonah died. Like, I don't really see much value into getting into that specific debate. But what we do know is like, it's going to be the third time I've drawn this picture, but it's a good picture. Well, it's not a good picture. It's a useful teaching tool. When in the, like when we think about like, where is heaven and where is hell? Like, I don't think most of us actually think about that very much, because if we did, what? We would lose our minds. Similar to if Jesus ascended in physical form, where is he now? He's ascended as a physical being, so he's got to be somewhere. So where is he at? Is he on Pluto? What's going on? I don't know. So we don't tend to think that way. We're like, oh, it's like, you know, it's an abstraction. Hell is like, and heaven is like, and you know, that's how we talk. And in the Jewish mind, the land of the dead is a very specific place. You have the land, which God made for humans to live on. That land sits on top of the chaos waters that were there from the beginning of creation. And that land is supported by these pillars. You'll hear about those in Psalms a lot, that God is holding the pillars, or that the pillars of the earth are shaking. And then underneath this land, that's Sheol. That's where the dead go. When you bury people, what are you doing? You're taking someone who's in the land of the living and you're bringing them closer to the land of the dead, right? There's actually a whole rabbinic discussion about where are all the access points to Sheol. And one is in the waters. We get that from Jonah. One is in the land. We get that from the sons of Korah going down. So there's this idea that when Jonah's in this fish, depending on how literally we take his story, like he very well might have just gone straight through Sheol. He's literally in the land of the dead. And when you're in a dark place where you can't move or do anything, nobody can hear you, you can't access anyone else, and you're in the land of the dead, what's the real difference between that and being dead? In some meaningful sense, however literal, however figurative we want to make it, Jonah, in the Jewish mind, passes through death, which, whoa, sign of Jonah, crazy. So yeah, there's something going on there. There's a lot of death imagery happening in this psalm.
Isn't it interesting that he wanted to separate himself from God, and then when he was separated from God, he felt an overwhelming darkness, and he no longer wanted.
Yeah, because I think we maybe talked about this, but there's kind of two ways to read Jonah being thrown off the boat. One is that he's trying to save these sailors, which I do think he's probably trying to do. I like to, maybe, I don't know. But the other is like, this is the final run from God. This is the last sprint away from God. Where's the one place God can't get me? Here. If I'm gone, can the dead praise you from Sheol? Oh, I don't know. Maybe they can. Not even a fish. But that Jonah is trying to escape. And now he has escaped, but he's still alive. So yeah, maybe that's why it takes 3 days. It takes 3 days of him being like, I don't think this worked. Maybe. I don't know. Jonah's having a real rough time. Nothing he's doing is working out for him. But yeah, he wants to run away from God. He wants to go where he thinks God can't get to him. And now he's there, and either he's like, oh, God's here too, or he just doesn't like it. He's like, this is terrible, which I think as we dig into this psalm, we'll explore a bit.
It's also weird that while he prays that you brought my life up from the pit, while he's supposedly praying from the belly.
Yes, this is a thing that is so perplexing to me. The way Jonah talks doesn't make any sense, because this whole parable is him describing how he got delivered from the belly of Sheol, from the pit, from all these places. He's in a fish in Sheol. This has not happened, right? So why is he talking about it as if it did happen? It hasn't. So that's very weird. There's this kind of, is he manifesting? I don't know. Like, why does Jonah, because you would expect Jonah to be like, I was wrong, can you please save me? That's what I would expect Jonah to say from the fish. But instead he says, man, it sure is great that you saved me. Thanks for that. And like you could be, I think one reading is like, well, the fish saved him from drowning. And it's like, yeah, but now you're in a fish and the fish hasn't let you out for 3 days. So like huh? what is going on? It's not the prayer. Every time Jonah opens his mouth, it makes no sense. I love this man. Yeah, so that is truly bizarre that he's describing all this imagery of being lifted up out of Sheol, and he's presumably praying this from Sheol in the depths of the land of the dead right now.
But don't you read some of the same kind of wording in Psalms?
Yeah.
On the one, it might begin with, oh, I think I'm going to die, and then it's, oh, I praise you that I'm not going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Psalms are predominantly read by people in exile as well. So you have all these Psalms about, you've delivered me, to people who are currently being crushed by an oppressive regime. So there's a very interesting dynamic in the Psalms in general that Jonah is maybe reflecting here of talking about deliverance as if it's already happened, giving thanks for deliverance that is not yet here, but is coming.
Wouldn't that be like us, already but not
yet? Yeah, a big already but not yet situation of which is really rooted in what? It's rooted in who God is, what's his character, and what do you believe his posture toward you is, right? It takes immense faith to pray a psalm of thanksgiving for deliverance when you are currently in the belly of Sheol, or as Jeremiah says of the Israelites, in the belly of Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah. Anything else weird in here? Yeah.
I find it weird down in verse 9 where he says, what I have vowed, I will pray.
Ah, yeah.
What is he vowed? We haven't heard anything.
Yeah, what is this vow? That seems, we haven't heard him say anything. We've heard him do literally the opposite, so that's weird. Yeah.
There's a lot of passive language in the passage.
Mm.
Things that, like he's basically blaming all the good and the bad fully on the Lord, when we can see clearly in chapter 1 that he's very much an active participant in his plight, right? Even to the point that all we know from chapter 1 is that he told the soldiers to throw him into the deep, right? Like,
yeah.
You don't hear God saying,
right.
Jonah, tell them to throw them. We know that he's active in the situation that he's in.
Yes.
And then it's funny, like, you took me away from the temple. Well, he was actively running away from the temple.
Yeah.
If anyone was trying to get far away from the temple, it was Jonah. So you see this kind of crybaby, depressed passiveness in the passage that it's still acknowledging the Lord, right? But it's in this, like, what have you done to me, right? Like, this is, so there's a lot of that passivity to his plight, where he's not really fully acknowledging his. Yeah,
in my head, this is like the cheap Presbyterian gambit of I'm just going to hide in the sovereignty of God. God, you did everything, and I'm just here. I'm just along for the ride. It's there's an interesting tension that we hold within the Jewish and the Christian faith of God is sovereign, and yet I am a responsible human being. And we can fall into either pit there. And we see people doing this, where it's like, well, if God is sovereign, then I have no responsibility whatsoever, right? God did everything, so okay, whatever. Or God isn't sovereign and I have to do everything. There's pitfalls either way. And it seems like Jonah is playing this weird psychological trick where if he can blame everything on God, then he really had nothing to do with what happened to him. Instead of living in this tension of God is in control, and yet God asked me to do something, and I didn't do it, and I ran away. And this is, I have ownership of this. I have responsibility for this. So it is, Jonah's, what we're going to see as we go through, as we start to dig into all the references Jonah is making, because he's making absolutely scores of references, is Jonah is employing religious language that is good language. He's saying true things with zero self-awareness, which I'm sure none of us can relate to. Anything else that jumps out to anybody?
And then I remembered,
Yeah.
which sounds like God and his covenant promises.
Mm-hmm.
When he's,
Yeah, the theme of remembering, when we talk about remembering in the Old Testament, we're usually not talking about literally like, oh, the burner on the stove. We're talking about like, calling to mind a relationship or an obligation or a covenant of some kind. We're talking about this thing that happened in the past is motivating what I'm doing now. And so there's something, Jonah has this moment of remembering, which is what Moses tells the Jewish people to always do. Don't forget, remember the covenant. And I suppose there's a lot of questions here. What actually prompts Jonah to remember? Why didn't he remember this while he was on the boat before he got thrown into a fish? And like in general, as we've talked about all through chapter 1, what is happening in Jonah's like psychology here? What is driving this man? Everything he's done makes no sense, especially when you remember that he's a prophet. He's supposed to be like an upstanding person that talks to God. And everything he does is just like, what, dude? So let's dig into this prayer a little bit. So this is very much a psalm. And so what we're going to find is throughout this psalm, we are going to be yoinked over to other psalms just throughout this whole thing. So in the beginning here, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. We're going to be turning a lot today. Although I guess it depends on how many psalms we get to. But if you want to turn, go to Psalm 120 and see if you can find the connection. This one's a short one. We got a lot of long ones. This one's nice and concise for us. And I think it's very interesting that this one comes first. So, Psalm 120, we'll just read this whole thing. A song of ascents. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Okay, so we have a very clear connection here. The way that both of these psalms start are basically exactly the same. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. So then, why might the author of Jonah be pointing us to this psalm? Or what seems weird about this psalm in relation to this story? Yeah, so like this is a thing. God tells Jonah to call out to Nineveh. The captain tells Jonah to call out to God. And Jonah doesn't do either, right? Jonah's whole thing has been silence. And so now Jonah is either finally calling out to the Lord or he's describing something that has not happened. As far as we know, this is the first time that Jonah has spoken. So it would be weird to say, in my distress, I called to you, which is what I'm doing right now. That right now is what I'm talking about. What I did in the past is right now. That's kind of strange. So this prayer begins with Jonah calling to the Lord, but we never hear that in the story. So that's weird. Jonah very specifically didn't call out. And yet here he's construing himself as if he did.
Is there a parallel between, like, you said that it was written to people in exile?
Mm.
They're, like, among people, they probably felt like they were among people of blindness. I feel like there's a connection here.
Yeah, so I think broadly, I'll give the game away here. I think broadly, the neat thing I think the author is doing here, Jonah's prayer in his lips is hypocritical and lacks any self-awareness whatsoever. It is a prayer that is suspect at best. But that same prayer in the mouth of an Israelite living in exile, actually very good prayer. So I think that there's this tension here, because we're talking about the Assyrians, right? These are people who destroyed the nation of Israel. The Assyrian, like, if you're someone who's reading this after the Assyrians have already exiled the northern kingdom, then yeah, this is absolutely coming to mind. What it was like to be in exile, or what happened to the people in exile, versus Jonah's experience. So I think that the author is trying to get us to see in that this is a good prayer, and yet a prayer like this can also be distorted, or come from a place where it is mostly lip service. It is mostly Bible speak at the service of something else. Anybody know what a song of ascents is? Yeah.
That's also an overlap between the two because of Jonah's temple language.
Yes.
Right? That he wants to be directed toward the temple or to see the temple again. The Song of Ascents were the specific songs that the children of Israel were given to sing as they went to Jerusalem.
Yeah. Yeah, because Jerusalem's at the top of a mountain. It's more of a hill, but at the top of a mountain. So when you ascend the mountain, you sing this. It's a road trip song, essentially. So it's interesting that Jonah starts by referencing a song of ascents, because why is the temple important? Yeah, it's the place where humans and God can coexist in some way. It's where we can meet God. So the temple is a place where we can meet God. This is a temple, don't question it. But what has Jonah been doing this whole time? Yeah, running from God. It's very interesting that Jonah, after this whole arc of him going down, 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 away from God, being silent, now he's bringing to mind going up to the temple. He's going to talk a lot about the temple. Weird thing going on here, that he is in some meaningful sense as far away from God as he can be. And now he is thinking about the place where he could meet with God, the very place that he was trying to get away from earlier.
And do you think that he could have also borrowed those words to put the reader in mind of the psalm and cause us to think that he really prayed that God would relent and not make him go to Nineveh?
Interesting. Well, yeah, it is interesting that he, at no point in this psalm does he talk about the actual dynamic that led to this situation. There's no repentance in this psalm. Don't know if you noticed that. There's no, I'm sorry, that was wrong. There are a lot of psalms that'll be like, you know my sin. In fact, we're going to see some of those. There's none of that here. He just wants to go home to where the temple is. Yeah, it's truly bizarre. It's not the psalm you would expect to hear in this situation, which I think actually, to me, this line, deliver me from lying lips, in the context of that psalm, presumably that's about other people, right? That's about other people around you who are being deceptive, who are deceiving you, who are going to betray you. But in this sense, I wonder, this isn't like a slam dunk, but I wonder if we're being called to this psalm where like 60% of it is about lying, and Jonah is going to give this kind of out of both sides of his mouth prayer. Sometimes the lying lips are yours. Sometimes you need to be delivered from your own self-deception. I don't know that Jonah's trying to trick God. I think Jonah maybe has tricked himself in some way as to how all of this comes together for him. So that's where we start. Then, out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice, for you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. This is definitely where we're going to end, because this is a chunky psalm. Psalm 18. So Jonah has this image of being in the belly of Sheol, and then we get all this water imagery, which I can't imagine why he's thinking about water at this point in time. And so we start to see there are a lot of psalms that use water, a flood, drowning as an image. And this one, I think, is, there's a lot of links to this one in this passage. And I want us to just read through this and see what stands out to us. So buckle up. It's going to be a lot of poetry. Psalm 18, to the choir master, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, their Sheol. The torrents of destruction assailed me. The cords of Sheol entangled me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. There we are again. And my cry to him reached his ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations, also of the mountains, which is probably where Jonah is right now, trembled and quaked because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him. Thick clouds, dark with water. Sounds like a storm. Interesting. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. And he sent out his arrows and scattered them. He flashed forth lightnings and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. He sent me from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his rules were before me, and his statutes I did not put away from me. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. So the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his sight. With the merciful, you show yourself merciful. With the blameless man, you show yourself blameless. With the purified, you show yourself pure. And with the crooked, you make yourself seem torturous. For you save a humble people, but the haughty eyes you bring down. For it is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness. For by you I can run against a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He's a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? The God who equipped me with strength and made my way blameless. He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights. He trains my hands for war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand supported me, and your gentleness made me great. You gave a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. I pursued my enemies and overtook them, and did not turn back till they were consumed. I thrust them through so that they were not able to rise. They fell under my feet, for you equipped me with strength for the battle. You made those who rise against me sink under me. Interesting. You made my enemies turn their backs to me, and those who hated me I destroyed. They cried for help, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine as dust before the wind. I cast them out like the mire of the streets. You delivered me from strife with the people. You made me the head of the nations. People whom I had not known served me. As soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners came cringing to me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their fortresses. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be the God of my salvation, the God who gave me vengeance and subdued peoples under me. who rescued me from my enemies. Yes, you exalted me above those who rose against me. You delivered me from the man of violence. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing to your name. Great salvation he brings to his king, and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. Okay. I want to just pull out a few little things there, because we only have 3 minutes. I'm sure we can do justice to this psalm in 3 minutes. So a few themes going on here. So we have this thing of being surrounded by death, right? Something that Jonah is going to iterate throughout this, his own psalm, is that he is in the pit of death. He is surrounded by death. The cords of death are all around him. Jonah is going to talk about how the reeds are wrapped around his head, right? So in this sense, the psalmist and the Jonah, very similar situations. But then God intervenes, right? And when God intervenes in the psalm, God does this big rescue from his enemies and shows up and wipes out everyone that's going to try and hurt Jonah or hurt the psalmist. But in what way does God intervene with Jonah? Yeah, he throws a storm at him, right? In this, the storm is directed at the psalmist's enemies. In Jonah, Jonah's the one who gets hit with the storm. And when you know it, it's his enemies that try to keep him from being swallowed by that storm. And then, he gets swallowed by a fish. All of the actions of kind of aggression from God happened to Jonah instead of Jonah's enemies. So we have this crazy, crazy heavy metal image of God showing up and rescuing David, which, remember too, this is a psalm about David being rescued from his enemies. Is Jonah being rescued from his enemies? Not really. What enemies? And then verse 20, the Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he rewarded me, for I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. Yikes, Jonah. I don't know if you can depart from God any harder than running the opposite direction of where he tells you to go. But apparently, Jonah has this image of I'm the good guy. He's dealing with me according to my righteousness. I've kept his statutes. I've kept his laws. I'm the good guy. And you know who the problem is? It's all of these enemies. Because the rest of this psalm, after he gets set on a high place and he gets supported and he's secure, then it's about him just murdering the heck out of all of his enemies and getting them to be subdued to him. But in this story, it's quite the opposite, isn't it? Jonah's enemies try to save him. And furthermore, the Ninevites that he's going to go speak to, we know later in the story, God is going to save those people. Right? There's one line in here in particular. They cried for help, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. That's not what happens in this story. So in this story, Jonah sets himself up as God's anointed. God likes me. And God hates all my enemies. And he is going to elevate me over my enemies. And I'm going to come out on top. We're going to come out on top. And these people are going to be crushed. And we're going to see throughout. This is the paradigm that Jonah has. God is on my team. And he hates these people. And so whatever is happening, I get access to God because of who I am. And these people are toast because of who they are. And Jonah, try as he might, he cannot get himself out of this way of thinking. And we're going to see as we go through this prayer, it just gets weirder and weirder because Jonah is going to keep perceiving himself as the righteous person in this scenario and these people as the problem. And it's very clearly the opposite. And yeah, he's able to read a passage of scripture, and that is very clearly meant to convict him about his own actions. And boy, howdy, does it have the opposite effect on him. Which, I don't know, a vulnerability we do well to think about, maybe. But we're over time, so I'm going to pray us out, and we will hopefully knock out the rest of Jonah 2 next time.